welcome to the brand new Technology and Reform Committee. We'll kick off the meeting. It's January 14th, 8:32 a.m. And welcome. I'm State Senator Mark Cran, the chair. Today, I think what we'll do is we wanted to bring our committee together. We won't be taking public testimony. We won't be doing taking any action, but we wanted to have a conversation about where we see the committee going, and certainly want everybody's feedback and input, and to get your thinking caps on about how effective we can be in the realm of kind of the technology and the reform as we know the jurisdictions are defined today. Welcome to Senator Report. And I think we're only missing Senator Westrom. So with that, I would like to we'll just go run through introductions of everybody on our team, our staff, nonpartisan staff and partisan, and just give a brief update. Let's see, how many former House members do we have here? I don't think we have anybody except Senator Westrom. So I just wanted to redefine what brief meant. But I'm State Senator Mark Cran, and so I'm just started my second term, and I represent the Senate District 32 North Branch. I live in North Branch. It's Chisago counties and Isanti counties. I have the majority of both of those counties located 40 miles north of St. Paul, Minneapolis. But I was born and raised 5 blocks west of the Capitol here. Raised my kids in the St. Paul Midway areas. If you see or hear me make statements about being a proud frog towner, that's where my family immigrated to, and that's where we all grew up, between Rice Street and the Frog Town and east side of St. Paul. And so I've my interests are, you'll hear me always talk about, so one special interest mine is you'll hear about Christmas. So you might get sick of Christmas and our display, but we raise a lot of money for our local community, and we do provide that relief for around the Christmas time. That we have about 7,000 people drive through my front yard to view our Christmas display. So next year, non-pandemic world, I'm actually planning to host an event and invite everybody up, Republican, Democrat, and have a good day of get away from the office and have a fun day around the bonfire and at the Christmas display. So look for that next December. But with that, let's move on. So we also have, although as Senator Westrom has it on, Senator Westrom is our vice chair. With that, I think we'll go to our ranking minority member, Senator Fate, and we've got you adjusted. So how about you give us an update or an overview of your introduction?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Omar Fate. I'm the ranking minority member as well. I'm the state senator for District 62, which is in South Minneapolis, Hennepin County. I'm really excited to be a part of this committee. I look forward to working with all of you and learning from all of you and getting some meaningful work done. So thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Welcome aboard. And so let's go to Senator Osmick.
Can you hear me?
We can. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay. You don't want to see the inside of my truck. And I am hands-free. Senator Dave Osmick, representing the western part of Hennepin County, as well as the flag portion of Chanhassen. This is the start of my third term. Before being elected to office, I served 11 years on a city council. So I have a lot of experience within the realm of state government, and as well as being a technology person. I, for many, many years, was a consultant for United Health Group, doing a lot of work in technology and databases and that kind of thing. So good to see most of you. I think I've seen before someplace, so good to see you.
Thank you, Senator Osmick. How about we go to Senator Wickland? Senator Wickland, the senior member on the of your caucus on our committee. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Audio here, there. Thank you. Glad to be here. I'm Senator Melissa Wickland. I represent District 50, and that includes most of Bloomington and then part of Richfield as well. This is beginning my third term in the state Senate, and prior to that, I spent 3 years on the school board in Bloomington. And then my background also includes working in the technology field. I have an electrical engineering degree and worked for quite a few years at the phone company. Changed names many times, but I was an engineer and a manager of IT people development and network people at the telecommunications company, which was Quest at that time. So glad to be here, and I hope we can work on some of the key things that are facing our state. And I've been a part of the Blue Ribbon Council on IT along with Senator Coran, and I hope we can move some of those initiatives forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Senator Wickland. And I think you'll hear my opening statement that we're going to use focus a lot of things on the work we did on the Blue Ribbon Council, and I think we'll be the ones to help see through the implementation of some of those recommendations in our committee. So with that, let's go to Senator Rich Draheim.
Thanks, Chair Coran. Rich Draheim, representing District 20, which includes most of LeSueur County, part of Scott, and part of Rice counties. Small business owner. I own multiple small businesses and have just finished up my first term here in the Senate, and really excited about the reform portion of this committee and seeing what we can do to shape state government and improve its efficiency and probably more importantly, the transparency of state government. I think we do a lot of good things. But I think there are some improvements we can do. So thank you, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Senator Draheim. And we have Senator Port. If you can give us your update.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, everyone. I am Senator Lindsay Ports. I am newly elected to represent the District 56, which is Burnsville, Savage, and part of Lakeville in the South Metro. I'm really excited to be on this committee and hopefully talk about some technology that is different than my children's distance learning, which is sort of encapsulated my life for the last few months. Really looking forward to working with you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Port. I think every parent is in the same boat. And we'll be touching, I already had a conversation on Minute in regards to the technology piece of our home learning experience. So with that, I think I haven't seen Senator Westrom join. So let's move on to, we have our committee staff. So can we, Alec Bjorn is our committee administrator. And so welcome, Alec. If you can give us your update.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alec Bjorn. I'm the committee administrator for this committee, as well as Senator Kiffmeyer's State Gov Committee. I know we have some overlap from there, so it's nice to see all of you again. I know this is a new committee for all of us, so I'm looking forward to tackling some new issues and working with all of you, and hope we have a good session. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Alec. And so the committee legislative assistant running the technical part of the meeting is Jesse McCardle. Jesse, how about you give us an overview?
Good morning, members and staff. Jesse McCardle here. I'll be the committee legislative assistant, doing quite a bit with the Zoom and making sure that all runs smoothly, and also serving the committee in a variety of functions. So if there's ever anything I can help with, I'd be happy to do that, and looking forward to a very good session as well. Thank you all.
Excellent. Thanks, Jesse. And we have nonpartisan, we got Senate Counsel, Stephanie James. We're so glad to have her on our team. And she also will bring the continuity between state gov. Anything we do will likely, or most of what we do on the minute side, policy-wise, would go back to state gov, which I also serve on and have served on for the last 4 years with Stephanie on that committee as well. So Stephanie? Sorry, Miss James.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Stephanie James from Senate Counsel. I think I got the assignment because Minute typically is a part of State Gov that I cover. But also I have a technology background. My undergraduate degree is in mechanical engineering, and I spent 20 years as a patent lawyer before I came to the Senate, and I worked with clients with a lot of intellectual property that was in the technology area, including like software patents and things like that. So,
Thank you, Ms. James. And then we have our research. So we have on the Republican side, Joey Wiley. Joey, why don't you give us an update?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Joey. I am the Senate Republican researcher for this committee, as well as all the other committees that touch state or local government in any way. So if you have any questions, obviously Ms. James is a great resource. I'm also here to help out. This is my 4th session with the Minnesota Senate Republicans, and I am very excited to get going here and hit the ground running. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Thanks, Mr. Wiley. And last but not least, we got Ryan Majerus. Ryan, looking forward to your update and welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, my name is Ryan Majerus. I work for Senate DFL Research, and I've been with the Senate since 2011. Thanks.
Welcome to the committee. Thanks, everybody. I just have to give for a technical piece. When my office goes dark because of the really efficient motion sensor in my office, I will either be flailing my arms wildly or turning my camera off while I flail my arms wildly to get the lights to turn back on. So we're trying to get that worked out. I don't know anybody else's offices who has it set every 15 minutes where it just goes dark. Less intrusive, except for when we're on these remote committees. So with that, the one piece of my background that I didn't focus on is, so I spent, this is my 38th year. I spent just under 18 years at the Minnesota Department of Revenue. Built all the state's electronic tax filing payment solutions, and had an opportunity to work through every aspect in the Department of Revenue and seeing the life cycle of that entire business model. Always had a job in the private sector, and then in addition to, in the last 18 years, sold business process outsource services from entire agencies into state government to solutions and outsourcing, staff augmentation, all of those things. So it was really a priceless part of my background that really helps, I think, serving in our role here in the government. So anybody who's been on any committees with me, you'll hear some of this is repetitive from the perspective of when we look at reform, the opportunities that we have. You'll always hear me talk about going after the root cause. And for us, less focus on legislation and a bill that feels good, but things that are really going to move the needle and that are structural in nature that I think we can really help. Don't care what side of the fence you're on, we can really, I think, make some really impactful changes or recommendations through this committee. And so we hope you will get your thinking caps on and enjoy the journey with us. So I just wanted to cover, with technology, the technology portion of our committee, I think it's pretty clear. Our guardrails are minute policy. And so it includes everything within the minute policy. Any finance or any fiscal issues, of course, will flow back through the State Gov Operations Committee. As I look at it initially, I think our focus is going to be on the Blue Ribbon Council. I also served on that for the last, or for its existence with Senator Wickland. We had a variety of recommendations that came out of that committee, and some of them are procurement reform. Really looking at how do we fill a gap or obtain knowledge and information through refining that process that doesn't naturally exist. Project management life cycle. I served on the modernization subcommittee. There's a whole host of recommendations, and I think for us, we can be that effective committee that can see, not just producing a report or a series of recommendations, but make sure that we have the ability, or that the agency is actually working on the implementation of those recommendations. There's a lot of elements to the identification of an IT or a systems project need, both internally and externally. And I think the work was really good. We put together a really comprehensive life cycle of what that means, from initial concept identification, determining business needs, project management, funding life cycles. And so we'll do in our next meeting, I believe we're going to do some of the overview of those and have Minute talk about where they are in the implementation of that. The other Minute in the overview will lay up for data center consolidation. I'm not sure we even talked about that at all in the last year of last session. We need an update on it to see where they're at. And I think everybody today, one of the other big pieces would be cybersecurity. I think we really could be the committee that provides the light and education on what that really means for us in state government, short term and long term. What do we think that model looks like that's in place today? Part of the Blue Ribbon Council has addressed that. There's some recommendations, but there's also a variety of operating models. What do we do for instant response teams? Does that require us to have infrastructure? And so I've asked Commissioner Tomes, I've already given him kind of a brief update on the key things we'll be looking at for them to provide in our initial update. But thinking about infrastructure, we've also met with the National Guard. The National Guard has an IT arm, and they're as vital in our security, not just physical security, but internet and cybersecurity as well. Some of the conversations where there's a huge desire in the National Guard side that some retired IT cybersecurity people want to be able to be part of this solution. And can we create a volunteer citizen force? Those are the types of things that have been tossed about. And then the other piece that's really embedded in kind of reform, or at least the really obvious piece of reform, is self-service expansion. Part of the current Blue Ribbon Council's focus is a huge push on self-service and reform. Automating, with the rapid transformation of business and the desire, or the government has been less accessible. And I think further driving the need for how do we do modernization through accessibility. And if we can cash checks and we can, deposit checks and all those things on that amazing device we all carry in our pockets, there's very few transactions that I can see that we can't fully automate and improve the life cycle of those transactions for all of our citizens with the technology they have in their pockets or the technology they have at home. They're working on a list, and I think we're going to help expand that list. So at the end of our session, we have at least a process and identification of all of our near-term opportunities and what we need to put in place for long-term opportunities and overall modernization when our citizens are required to interact with government, either for pleasure or involuntary in the world of tax or permit and obligations, legislative obligations. So before we go any further, I see we have Senator Westrom has joined. Welcome, Senator Westrom. If we've already gone through introductions, if you could pop onto the screen and give us your introduction and a brief update of your terms in the Senate and your background. Senator Westrom. All right.
Well, maybe we'll, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thanks, Senator Westrom. The floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, good morning, and introductions. Just Senator Tory Westrom. I'm from District 12, Western Minnesota, covering 8 counties from Stearns all the way to the Dakota borders. And Mr. Chair, just look forward to the opportunities of reforming government because sometimes it lags behind, and there's always good opportunities to ask what if, and look forward to what we can do to help make government work better for the people we serve.
Great, thanks, Senator Westrom. So before we move on to the next kind of the reform, because it is a much broader set of guardrails, if it has any guardrails yet, we don't know. But any questions or comments? Because what I'd like to do here is just to toss out, if you guys have any ideas around the technology side of it, let's toss those out from a perspective to get our thinking in the right direction, or to just create ideas. I'd love to know your thoughts on what you think, or where you'd like to help, or where you believe we could go from the committee perspective, and what's important to you around the technology. So, I'm sorry, we forgot some of the procedures. Raise your hand, either physically, and we'll call on you. This is probably our least formal meeting. So, anybody, any comments, questions, or concerns? Senator Wicklund?
Yeah, I'll just comment on relating to the Blue Ribbon Council, and especially the area of cybersecurity. I really hope that we can move, if your committee is able to take up some of the items that were recommendations from the council and ones that we've already, we've had some discussion on in the Senate, like the Legislative Commission on Cybersecurity. I think it's a step that would help us as a legislature ensure that we have a focus on cybersecurity that is allows members to really understand the importance and then some of the key threats that the state is facing. So I'm hoping that your committee is going to be able to take a look at that. And there's some other things that maybe we've discussed already, and that could more easily move through. But that would be one thing for sure. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Wickle. And I think, and it fits right into, I think, what our purview is. The things that we know today have been highlighted, but we all know I think the cybersecurity importance is growing to the top. It almost becomes primary because without it, it doesn't allow us to do anything else on the technology side, whether it be expansion of self-service and our requirement to prove to the citizens that their data is protected and our systems are protected and their dollars are protected. So I think it's one, are we driving the policy, but two, are we also providing, I think we're the education vehicle to make sure everybody understands that we have what we have identified, what we're working on, and what our future state looks like. So with that, I think next is Senator Port.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really interested in working on sort of the data privacy piece of it, particularly as lots of our kids have started working through technology in their homes, making sure that we're being good stewards of that information and putting into place sort of the safeguards that we need to, as this is probably going to become a bigger piece moving forward.
Thank you, Senator Port. The data privacy was actually one of the subgroups within the Blue Ribbon Council. So Alec and Jesse, can we make sure to get the Blue Ribbon report, the last report recommendations to all of our committee members? And next, Senator Drahan.
Thanks, Chair. I think it would be helpful if we, talking about security, I believe Min State got threatened and had to pay a ransom. And it would be really nice to review the breaches that we've had here in the state over the last couple of years, what we had for issues that came of, paying a ransom, giving out people's data, but then what do we do to correct it? And does every agency have a plan in place, like I believe they're supposed to? So that would be helpful moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Drahan. I think those are all, every one of them is an important issue. And I think just on the discussion, it really is our top issue from an IT perspective, to make sure that we know or that everybody, at least in our committee, is educated. And then it's our obligation to educate the rest of the legislative body and drive the good policy that makes it or puts those things in place. Those recommendations that we know, and again, those things that will evolve through the life cycle of our committee. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Awesome. With that, so the reform side, again, we're still waiting for jurisdictions. I think there's a couple areas where we're going to see probably a lot of reform requests around Health and Human Services, Department of Health, and so those are the areas where we'll do some coordination to see what issues that would be beneficial to run through our committee or others. Before we go on, I think Senator Fate, you raised your hand?
Yeah, I apologize. I was trying to raise it earlier. I was having trouble. I'm sorry. So thank you so much. One of the things I'm interested in, and I'd like to learn more about if it falls within our purview, is the way our government services, such as like the unemployment insurance, and the way people interact with them, and fixing that and making it more user-friendly.
Thank you, Senator Fate. I think those are those are the kind of the reform or blended issues that are reform but IT related. So I think those are all within our purview. Senator Westrom?
Mr. Chair, just a comment while we're talking about the reforms and the technology. The one thing we also have to weigh is how do we not frustrate citizens, and how can we have quick response to customer service when technology doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And so that's just an aspect of some things that we need to keep in mind, because the virtual world can kind of leave you out there alone and not having any place to turn to get assistance sometimes, because sometimes you just need that walking through, or the system doesn't work and nobody knows it until you've talked to somebody and they've looked into it. So just an aspect. I had that issue. You mentioned mobile deposits, and I had that issue just recently. And the bank called and they couldn't figure it. I called the bank and they couldn't figure out what was going on either, because what they told me should be on the app and site wasn't there. And so just aspects of the reform and technology, that there's still always a human element, and how do we find that efficiency, but how do we also maybe come up with best practices or a new way to have a quick response team for any agency or any consumer finding problems doing what we've automated. And so just an aspect I think we want to always be mindful of, because computers are great and technology is until it doesn't work.
Thanks, Senator Westrom. And you know me, those in my caucus know my background and the Koran rants of the past about going after the root cause. It's not just the application of technology, but how did we apply the technology? How did we develop the technology? Do we even understand from whose view are we developing those applications? I think I think many cases we lose the view of the citizen because we don't have a baked-in process of acquiring their knowledge and making sure we're meeting their needs, and actually not just meeting their needs, but meeting their needs where they are with the technologies they have at hand. And that includes an individual, includes businesses, mom and pops to large corporations, and multinational corporations have to interact with us all the time. We in the government are really good. We can impose anything on them. They have no choice in government in which they get to interact with. And so to me, it's always the customer comes first, and meet the customer where they are. I think, Tori, you might have been listening to a conversation I had with the Commissioner of Dolly. They just implemented an EDI solution, electronic data interchange. That's great. It sounds good. They can implement it. Some people will be able to implement those solutions, but a lot of medium and small businesses don't have those technology resources available in-house. So what do? They have to incur a tremendous amount of cost and conflict in their business to be able to meet requirements that we set forth, and they have no choice but to incur the expense and modify their solutions. Versus, did we understand what their needs are? And this gets a little more technical, but electronic data interchange is a national format. It's so large, so broad, that it really is not a standard. And there are so many implementations of it that are expensive, and they have to do upgrades, and it's just not something that's inherent in many businesses. Versus knowing, are they working on a small computer that can do a flat file extract, a comma delimited Excel spreadsheet? We can collect that data with the tools they have to minimize the cost and the impact, which simplifies the compliance and the participation, especially when it's a mandated or regulatory component where they don't have a choice but to interact with. So you'll find that theme all throughout everything that I've ever done since I got here, and taking that customer comes first and meet them where they are in the technologies that they have. It really does matter, because in order for them to get buy-in, we have to simplify it for every way, shape, and form, or in any way, shape, and form we can. with that, that flows into, from my perspective on the reform side, we really have a whole host of things. But I think we'll get some jurisdictional guardrails, hopefully sometime soon. But it's really about policies, operations, delivery of service, statutory requirements. I think one of the things that this kind of blends into another committee, but I would ask people to think, what are the regulatory or reporting criteria in which we've imposed on businesses, schools, special education, drug treatment counselors? I love this scenario of a drug treatment counselor. Do you know every drug treatment counselor has to document every single visit and create their treatment plan on a every appointment basis? Takes them about 20 minutes. In that 20 minutes, they are documenting some 50 or 60 criteria that we've imposed, government regulatory reporting, that does not do one thing to aid in the benefit of the treatment plan or the care that that provider is doing. They also don't have to submit that plan. And ultimately what it does is when you think about the number of clients that they meet in a day, 20 minutes updating per client, and that information is never verified except for a slim chance once every 3 years on that institution. That means every single drug counselor is seeing 2 fewer people every single day. Now add that up to the number of drug counselors we have. Those are the types of things that we have to look at. What are the root cause issues that we are imposing on the people who actually touch and deliver services to our community? Most time it's the private sector. I don't care whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit enterprise. It's the private sector doing those things. Nursing homes, same thing. We got more people at computer screens doing reporting than we do at providing care and service in the rooms of the patients or the clients that they have. Those are the things that we have to really focus on. And for us, modernization comes in reform, automated transactions, whatever that be, kind of I believe falls in our purview. But I would always be pushing for what is the root cause or the root area we should be tackling to try and have the greatest benefit. So for me, my signature piece is whether it be our daily operation, doesn't matter what state agency it is, doesn't matter who ultimately delivers their service, is that, and it's not because we have bad people in state government. In state government, and I have to apologize for all of you who sat through this in committees with me before, it doesn't have any naturally occurring corrective action for when we get our job wrong. And so what we do is we morph into a process of creating real value without regard or a life cycle of training to make sure that they're attached to the decisions they make or the work they're doing actually improves the benefit of the service that actually touches clients. My favorite scenario is MNLARS. So for some, even for some of our freshman members, I think everybody knows what MNLARS is, and people look at it as it was a system that was broken. I ask you to think about it this way: it was not a system that was broken. When they turned it on, it had 50%, excuse me, of the capabilities of the previous system. Took 10 years and hundreds of millions of dollars. That's a horrible waste of time and resources. But the outcome of it was you also didn't get your services. You had to now take what is a 5-minute transaction and now it's a 20-minute transaction. Or you may take multiple trips to the DMV. Your time is extremely valuable. But the reason I like it is because it's one of those things in government that you actually understand, has a publicly exposed component to it, and it's frustrating. Rarely do you understand when government delivers something, if it fails, do you have an exposure to it? You don't. In the vast majority, some system, maybe a motor or a hunting license system, may be down for a couple hours. But that's about the extent of it. In this case, what I've been working on is driving to change the things so those don't happen. It wasn't a technology problem. You could probably look a little bit technology. It was really about, did the agency of Department of Public Safety know every single element within the system it had and every single business unit or community who depends on that system? Did we go out and learn what it takes before we develop the system? Did we go out and become an expert in every facet of the agency, not only to define the business rules, which the IT people depend heavily on, but also the knowledge that's comprehensive to the life cycle of every single one of those transactions, the decision-making capability, which ultimately develop these very large, complex systems. I would argue we don't have that training mechanism in place for everybody in.
You good now?
All right, can you hear me now? My line dropped right in the middle. So welcome to the new normal.
Here, if I could, I think the building put in something, if you go on too long, it'll cut off your mic, just like the lights.
Oh, great, great. That will really help us in the virtual world right now. But in describing in the MinLars solution, what will be one of the key things that I want to work on from my personal perspective is to implement a pilot of training and job attachment to the life cycle of why you exist within the agency and those that deliver services. In MinLars, it was Department of Public Safety, their back office employees. It was the deputy registrars, automobile dealerships, and everybody that has an interactive role in it and depends heavily on it. We need to put people, managers on the front lines of their agencies, walk side by side or shoulder to shoulder with their frontline staff, because they are the experts. We also need everybody to go out into the actual industries and businesses that they regulate. In the DMV, or I'm sorry, in the Department of Public Safety, 2 years into the implementation of it, rarely did they go out without TV cameras for a PR perspective, but with the business analysts and the agency personnel and the IT staff to sit down with those who use that system and figure out what works well for everybody. When you have that expert knowledge, the collaborative value of each one of those interactions grows dramatically. You can see how they use the system, but you can then also suggest better pathways to solve what we believe or anybody believes is a current obstacle or problem. Now, we need to do that across the board. So when you look at that from a MinLars perspective, it was a horrible waste of money and the outcomes were terrible. And we've had to spend more money to replace the system that wasn't 6 months old. Now apply that same deliverable outcome to health and human services where we're taking care of children, elderly, and disabled. That very same outcome is there, and we consume resources and set policies that endanger people's lives or impact the quality of their lives today. One of the things that Department of Human Services and Department of Health is, think about it this way, and those that regulate, just say nursing home or direct service providers, group homes, our goal or my goal is to create a training methodology that each person in the agency who regulates one of those lines of businesses is actually trained and certified at the lowest level of the industry they regulate. In this particular case, the scenario or sample would be a DSP, direct service provider, a CNA, certified nursing assistant, or a PCA, personal care attendant. I would want everybody in that agency to be trained, because how can you set policies or implement policies if you're not even participating or understand the minimum level of care or training required for your providers? I would then, in the Department of Human Services level around that, we have Department of Human Services state. We also have just as many in the county levels who are actually the interface to our clients. And then we have those that provide service.